as you watch that video that is not your life, because we've been saying how stressful it is to watch that, but for many of us, it is our lives. We've been doing this series called Breathing Room, and part of the reason for that is we all could use a little man, we could really use that in our lives. And so we've talked about how we're going to go about it through this series. And we've talked about 4 different subjects. And if you're new with us and you haven't heard about what we've been doing so far, I can catch you up really quickly. But my hope is that you'll go back and watch those messages because they really are for you. You know, we get no benefit after this. We really just want this as we go into the new year. Many people are thinking, maybe I should go to church. Maybe I should, get my finances in order. Maybe I should, get my schedule in order. Maybe I should get my work in order. And we hope that this series will be helpful to you. And so we want you to have breathing room in every area of your life. And so we've decided to choose 4 to concentrate on. In week 1, we talked about how our schedule, our time is a big deal. And we learned from this guy named Moses, who was one of the wisest people who ever lived. And he had this incredible aspect of what God taught him about his time. And he journaled in his time with God. And one of the things he said was, God, teach us how to number our days, because our days are numbered. And so we had to figure out through that, how do we act like our time is limited? Because it is. We can only fit so much in there. And then week 2, last week, we talked about beating burnout. That everyone has a pace and a limit. And so one of the things we use to illustrate this is this closet right here. That some of you are like, hey, that's my stuff in there. Some of you are like, that's what it looks like at my house or my back seat. And we said, hey, it's okay for your garage to look like this. It's okay for your back seat unless you need to take people somewhere. It's okay for maybe a section of your house to look like that, though that may kind of get into the realm of, ooh. But it's not okay for your life to look like this. And we've said kind of in this series is that, look, when you try to stuff more things in there, it's not good. Things get kind of jumbled around and you think, man, I can make time for that camping trip. I'll just bring my phone, so I can work or get some phone calls in, and stuff starts to fall out. I'll be able to make my kids game, and so I'll be able to show up, but I might have to be on the phone, or I may be worried about something, or because it's football time, like, hey, I can watch the game, and I can still spend time with my kids or my grandkids, even though I'm really distracted. And so we've used this to illustrate it's not okay for your life to look like that. It's not okay for us to have no space, no room in our time, in our schedule, in our finances, and in our work life. And so we've defined what breathing room looks like. And we've said this: breathing room is the space between your current pace and your limits. And we acknowledge that not everyone has the same limits. You may be a really high energy person, and maybe you don't need as much sleep, and maybe I need more than you do. Or some of you may have spending limits where you're really disciplined with your finances, we're going to talk about today. But and maybe some of us don't. Maybe some of us, when we see something, we're an impulse buyer. But all of us have a pace and a limit. We have paces in our relationships that there's so much time we can put into them, maybe so much time that we don't give them. We have a pace to how hard we're charging, maybe our credit card or our bank accounts and how much we're spending. We have a pace at work where we're only allowed to put in so much hours, but we go over that and we lose the trust of the people that we love. Or maybe we only have so much time because everyone has the same amount of time. So today, we're going to talk about dollars and cents. We're going to talk about money. And I want to tell this to you up front, just in case you're worried. I'm not going to ask for any of your money today. I'm not going to ask you to give to something. We're not starting anything. In fact, us as a church, we really want you to keep more of the money that you have. And part of the reason that is, we're going to talk about how money is a competing master for your life. And so when you have your finances in order, the rest of your life, it may not be perfect, but it's easier to do with the rest of the things in your life. And it turns out God has a lot to say about your finances. And you know what? We often think the most pivotal things, or maybe the most important things in our life, the 2 things are our time and our money. You and I can't get any more time back. It's all fixed. We can't borrow any more time. But guess what you can borrow and lose? Money. You can. And the reason that that's so pivotal is that we have believed a lie for so long. Commercials, that if you're a person who's in TV or advertising, this is not your fault. We love those things. You have to pay the bills. We get it. But for so long, things have been, commercials and TV and people and looking across the street have told us this lie. And so we need to make sure that we never equate these 2 things, which we often do. And it's this, and we want to make this observation, that your standard of living does not equal your quality of life. Those two things are not the same thing. And oftentimes we do equate those things. We say, if I had this much money, I would be happy. Or if I had this thing, if I had the boat that my neighbor had, or if I lived in the neighborhood that they did, I would be happier. And my quality of life and your quality of life, the lie that we have believed for so long, is if we have this thing, if we have this much money in our bank account, if we're allowed to go on this vacation, if we live in this neighborhood, if we send our kids to this school, then our quality of life will go up. And that's a lie. It's something that's not helpful, and I can prove it to you because you can raise your standard of life. You know how you do it? You do it with debt. You can raise your standard of living easily. You go get a loan. You put it on your credit card. You buy something maybe you don't need to impress people you don't even like. You do that. And sometimes, and I've done that, so it's not just a you thing, it's it's an us thing. And we can improve our standard of living. We can buy a house that's too much for us to afford. We can get into a car payment that maybe we don't have any business being in. We can go on vacation because the rest of our people in our family or our friends can't afford it, and we don't want to look like the people who can't go. And so we borrow, and we think that our standard of living will go up or our quality of life. So we do it with debt. And the reason we do it is really simple. It's immediate gratification. We see something on the shelf that we want, and we get it. And we can borrow and charge in order to get that, or spend money we just don't have yet that was for something else, because it's an immediate gratification. But here's the hard one, because that's the easy one. The hard one is you raise your quality of life through discipline. The act of saying, no, I don't need that, or maybe I don't need that yet, or maybe someday, or maybe I will save for that so I can pay for it in cash. Because honestly, it's okay to live in a nice neighborhood. It's okay to have toys. And I say this all the time. If you've got great toys, invite me over. Would love to come play, right? It's okay to own nice things. So I'm not bashing the fact if some of you are retired and you have lots of money. That is awesome that God has blessed you with that. That's not the problem. The problem for most of us is that we're not disciplined with the money that we have. And so we go the easy route, and we'll spend it quickly, or we'll borrow in order to get the things that we like. And our quality of life goes up because of discipline. And that's hard because it costs us immediate gratification. It might cost us stuff. It may cost us, a relational thing because other people are doing things and you say no. Because you're like, we can't afford that, we're not going to go. And other people may have a different opinion of you. And that's okay. Now, one of the things we want to advertise here is Financial Peace University. And so we understand we can't be experts in everything. And so we are doing a class called Financial Peace University by Dave Ramsey. And we want to give you a great deal on this class. Meaning, if you go to all 8 classes, we'll refund your money. We're that tied to this. We think money is so important that if you go to all of these classes, you pay the registration fee, and you get your finances in order, and you become a person who could be generous and have breathing room and be able to help others, and just your family life is just better, we'll refund it. We're that committed to this. And so you can go online, you can register for that, and if you go to all 8 classes, we're just going to give you your money back because we think this is such a pivotal part in your life. And if you're not a Christian, we hope this is just helpful, this message today. And if you are a Christian, man, what Jesus says about your finances and your stuff, this is not optional, as we'll discover. So I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think God is more interested in your standard of living or your quality of life? Which one do you think he's interested in? What's better, having an awful marriage or a good marriage, or having an awful marriage with cool cars? Who cares about that, right? But as you think about this, and the answer to this question, which hopefully is an easy one, I do want to engage real quick, is that, some of you are new here. Maybe you've been brought by a friend. And, when you invite someone to church, and this is such an interesting dynamic, you always I hope they don't talk about money this Sunday. Have you ever done that? You're like, this is the one time I've been talking to my neighbor for years, and they finally come. And the pastor on stage, man, they're talking about money in the church. They're handing out offering baskets, which we do because we really do think giving back to God should be a joyful thing. But man, we hope sometimes, I'm going to bring my friend to church, and I don't want them to talk about money. Well, and that's why today we want to tell you that we're not going to ask anything from you. But the reason we get to talk about money, the whole reason that we talk about it a lot, I think, and maybe we need to talk about it more often, is that because Jesus will later on say that there is something competing for mastery over your life. And that thing is money. And we're going to talk about how many times he mentions it. It's probably more than you think, actually. So in this one story, Jesus is talking to this guy to highlight this effect of how money is so important. In the Gospel of Mark, in chapter 10, Mark's a disciple, a follower of Jesus. He records this story of when Jesus is talking to this rich young ruler. So this young guy has a lot of wealth, and he's heard about what Jesus is offering, something he cannot buy. Jesus is going around talking about eternal life. And this rich young ruler cannot purchase that. And so he goes up to Jesus and he asks this question, hey, how do I get this eternal life? I hear it's a great deal. I really want my lifestyle. And we don't know exactly why he asked the question. Maybe he thought, man, I really want my lifestyle, my stuff, my prestige, my home, maybe everything else. I want this to carry on into eternity. How do I do that? And Jesus kind of answers him. He turns to him. Jesus looks at him and he loves him. Because the man asked this question and Jesus says, hey, you know what you should do. I mean, there's Old Testament scriptures. Honor your mother and father. You should honor the Sabbath. You shouldn't kill. You shouldn't, look at another woman with lust. I mean, you kind of know the things you should do. That's kind of the basis. And the guy says, I've done all these things. And Jesus looks at him and he loves him. And he says, that's not enough. That's just the basis. You're missing something. And so Jesus tells him, one thing you lack, to the rich young ruler. He says, you need to go and sell everything. And if you're a rich person, you just tune out after this, right? Go and sell everything that I have, and then you will have, and give it to the poor, and then you will have treasure in heaven. I mean, he kind of points out all the things that you love, and you're great. That pales in comparison to what you're going to get in eternity. So it should be easy. But it's not. And at this, the man's face, the rich young ruler, fell, and he went away sad because he had great wealth. And Jesus is teaching the crowd, and he's like, man, this is a big deal. I mean, that's how important money is. It possibly have kept, and we don't know the end of this story, it might have kept this man from eternal life. We don't know. The writers don't tell us. But Jesus makes this contrast between your money and your possession and eternal life with God. They're on opposing sides if we allow them to be. And it shouldn't be. I mean, money is not the problem. I mean, you've probably heard, money is the root of all evil. That is not the case. The love of money is the root of all evil. And just in case, we want to make sure to say that this is not just about having a lot of money. Money can be a master of your life if you have none. Because if you're a rich person, and there was a prophet that talked about this a little while ago. His name was Biggie Smalls. He said, "Mo money, mo problems," right? And he's right. The more money that you have, you worry about it. Where's it going to go? What's the economy going to do? Did I invest it in the right place? Is someone going to take it from me? I mean, we worry about it. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, when you have no money, you worry about it. How am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to send my kids to college? They really want to go. How can I repair my car? How am I going to make it this time? I mean, money is this pit of worriness on either sides of the spectrum. And so this is something that Jesus cares an incredible amount about. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn from a guy who came a little bit before Jesus, who wrote some of the greatest wisdom narratives in the Old Testament. He contributed to 2 books that we know of, at Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, and he wrote some great wisdom in there, and a lot of it's attributed to him. And so he's this king, and his name is King Solomon. And his father was a guy named King David, and King David was like this incredibly successful king for the nation of Israel. Like, they prospered like no one else. And it came time for King David to die and to pass his throne on to Solomon, who's like a teenager or something around this time. And he's like, God, I'm going through puberty. Man, that's hard enough. I don't want to lead a nation. How do I do this? And so Solomon essentially asked God for wisdom. He asked him, hey, God, help me rule. And so God grants his request. He says, because you didn't ask for stuff and for finances, I'm going to give it all to you, and you're going to be the wisest person who ever lived. And so Solomon is going to help us understand some just wisdom, some practical advice on what to do. And we're going to juxtapose what he is saying with 3 financial reality checks. And some of these may be completely new for you. Again, if you're not a Christian, we just hope these are helpful. And if you are a Christian, this is kind of a have to. So the first one is this, is you live on a percentage of your income, but you may not have decided what that percentage is. And maybe this is a new concept for you. You're like, yes, I know what it is, 100%. No, that's probably not a good thing. I mean, and this is available to everyone. This is such a powerful concept. I mean, if you go home and know exactly how much money you make, and then you decide, I'm going to allow us to live on 75% or 60 or 90, whatever it is, hopefully it's not 120, right? Hopefully it's not there. Is that you and I need to go home and decide what percentage to live off of. Because we need margin. We need margin to be able to save. We need margin to be able to be generous, maybe with our church or the people we love. We need margin to be able to save also for like emergencies or to be generous with our neighbors. We need to be able to say, yes, I want to buy you that new bike. I hope I can do that. But if you've never decided what percentage to live off of, it's dangerous. It can be incredibly dangerous because it'll be 100% or more. And Solomon knows this. I mean, he says in Proverbs 27, be sure you know the condition of your flocks. I mean, he's talking in shepherd terms, and we're not shepherds, but the principle is like give careful attention to your herds. Know what's going on in your finances in your life. If you don't know where your money is going or how much you're spending, I mean, you need to be able to have eyes on that. Because your riches do not endure forever. And this is such a powerful statement for him. Solomon, we think, was worth between $37 billion and $2 trillion. It's an absurd amount of money. So if a guy like him who has no want says, riches don't endure forever, I mean, that's money that no one will ever probably touch. And a crown is not secure for all generations. He's the king of a nation, and he realizes his time and his finances are finite. The second one is this. You think if you made more money that you wouldn't have any more worries. Have you thought about that? You're like, maybe I'm at this much, and if I could just make an extra $500 a month or an extra $1,000 a month or an extra $10,000 a year, I would be fine. Really? If we don't do the first one and decide what to live on, when we make more money, we will find a place for it to go. Our car is looking a little bit old. Maybe we should get a new one. Have you ever updated a part of your house and you just look at the rest of your house and you're like, dang it, and I got to do all that other stuff too, right? I mean, you make that look nice. You'll find a place for it. I mean, all of us have a mental list. If I had this money, I have some things on Pinterest or maybe in notes that I would really love to buy. And so it's a fool's errand to think that we just wouldn't have any more worries. I mean, Solomon knew this, and he contributed to Proverbs, and this may be attributed to someone else, but it's still wisdom. Keep falsehood and lies from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. I mean, God, give me the things that I need, not just the things that I want. And then they talk about, the writer of this basically says, here's the danger of either end of the spectrum. Otherwise, if I have too much money, I will disown you and say, who is the Lord? I mean, God, if I can provide for myself, why do I need you? If I have no wants, why should I want you? There's a danger there. And then the opposite end of the spectrum, or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. My God, if I don't have enough money, I'm always worrying about it. And when I'm worrying about it, I'm not thinking about you. Or I may do something illegal to get myself out of this. I may steal. I may borrow my way, and I may worry in a completely different way. I mean, the two ends of the spectrum is a big, big deal. The third financial reality check is this, is that you adjust your lifestyle expectations to match your earnings. Have you ever done this? Have you ever gotten a raise or maybe an inheritance or come into some money and now you think, man, my lifestyle was here, but now that I have a little bit more, my lifestyle should really be here. And we adjust it. And we think, maybe I should have that thing that I've been looking at for a long time. And we adjust our lifestyle. And Solomon knew this, and he says, look, whoever loves money never has enough. John D. Rockefeller was quoted famously as saying, hey, how much money is enough? And he was the richest person at the time. And he said, just a little bit more. The scale was always sliding. Contentment was a dream, at least for him. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. As goods increase, as your income goes up, so do those who consume them. I've got more, now I can get more. And then what benefit are they to the owner except to feast his eyes on them? I mean, have you ever done this? You bought something and you have to show it off. Come in the garage, look at the car I got. Do You see the new toy I have? I want to show it to you. It's on my phone. It's my screensaver. Who's my wife? Who knows? Just check this out. We don't have pictures of our family or kids anymore. It's our stuff. And we laugh uncomfortably because it's true, right? You will never make enough money unless the money that you make, or you make enough changes that the money you make becomes enough. It's not about how much you and I make. It's about the discipline we have with the money that we have been given. And this is an incredibly big thing. Now, we've been talking about money for a while now, and sometimes just talking about it, is difficult. We made some graphs for you to show you because it's always better with graphs. I don't know why that is. So let's put the first one up here. So this vertical one right here is your money. From all the way from like I have nothing to I can buy a yacht way up there. Okay. And then you got this horizontal line from like I just came into the world on the left-hand side to everything hurts and I don't even know why. Okay. So that's your time. And for most of us, this is how our income goes. Can we show that green line? For most of us in our life, our income is kind of steadily go up. And some of you are like, nope, mine's flatline. It's been dead for a while. Beep, no raises. And I really hope you get one, honestly. I really do want you to make more money because I hope that money is not an issue in your home. And I hope you can be generous with what you've been given, not so you can buy a bunch more stuff. But for most of us, that's kind of what our income looks like. And hopefully this is what your spending looks like. Do you see how they're not like next to one another? That your spending may increase and probably will increase along your life. But they'll never, at least according to this graph, they'll never meet, right? Do you know what that stuff right in between is called? It's called breathing room. When you're in this place, there are a couple things that happen. You don't argue about money at home anymore. You drive slower, which is fantastic. You don't worry about the things that you can buy. Your grandkids or your kids, and they really do need something. You don't check your bank account. You don't pull out the credit card. You go, yeah, we can get that for you. When a family member is in need, you go, we'll take care of you. When someone has a medical bill, you go, we'll pay that for you. When your kids need to go to college or your grandkids, you say, I will be there for you. When someone's buying their first house and they're your loved one, you go, I want to help you with that. Because you have this breathing room, this margin in between your income and your spending. But that's not how often most of us see it. Oftentimes, our income looks like this, if we can go back to it. That's our income line, and here's where our spending line is. Right there. We make $100,000, we spend $100,000. We make $35,000, we spend $35,000. Whatever that is, I don't know what your number is. But for so many of us, there's no margin. There's no room in the middle. And it's difficult, and you feel the tension. You drive faster. Time at home becomes tense. Why did you buy that? I saw that. My wife and I have done that to each other. Hey, man, why did you purchase that thing when we were in financial stress? You become nitpicky. There are things you can't do anymore. It becomes stressful to think about family vacations and to go place. I mean, it's horrible. And then there's a third one. So our income level is again like this. What happens when your spending looks like that? I mean, this is the place where you become a slave of can't. We can't vacation there. I can't help you with that. I can't do that for you. My wife Rachel and I realized we were in this place, I first became a pastor. And we've been in this place a couple times, just to be clear. When we lack discipline, we can get here just like everybody else. And so I went into a bank one time to get just a small loan for something. I can't even remember what it was. And they said, hey, you are lucky you. We'll give you more money. I was like, oh, this can't be good. And they said, you qualify for a mortgage. And we had never purchased a house. We're from California, and young people just don't do it there. I just don't know why it is. And so we moved out of state, and they said, hey, just get your financial stuff in order. And so we had to sit down on the floor one day to look at our finances, and it was terrifying. Her and I sat on the floor and we said, we are in trouble. We owe more than we thought. We don't have as much money as we thought. We don't have as much equity as we thought. I mean, it was painful. And some of you are in that right now. You know exactly what that's like. And here's maybe some uncommon sense for you. I want is better than I owe. Maybe for most of us, we just go, you know what, I do want that. But for right now, it's a no. I do want to have that, but I'll have to borrow to get it. I do want that thing that I've been really, really thinking of for years now. And rather than I deserve it, I don't want to owe someone else. And so maybe for a little while, it's just okay to say, I do want that. But I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to purchase it. I'm not going to borrow for it. I'm not going to charge it. I'm not going to get it. Now, all this stuff that we've been talking about also has an incredible spiritual component to it. So there is this part that's the practical aspect, which is our finances. But for Jesus, it's way more than that. For Jesus, for God in the flesh, who is Jesus Christ, this was more than that. And I want to prove it to you because people think that like the New Testament, the stuff that Jesus talked about, most people don't even know the things that he talked about the most. And money and stuff is actually a lot, if we can put those on here. 1 out of 10 verses in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the visuals of Jesus' life are about stuff and possession. 1 out of 10. There are less than 500 verses on faith, but more than 2,000 on money and possession. 16 of the 38 parables that Jesus taught, these stories that he helped help people understand what their life with God would be like, have to do with money and possessions. And then Jesus just gets to this point where he says, you can't serve both God and money, which is so surprising to most people. Because most people think, don't you mean God and the devil? I mean, isn't that what you mean? Don't you mean you can't serve God and the devil? And Jesus doesn't say that. In fact, he says this in Matthew 6. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and you will love the other, or you will be devoted to one and you will despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. I mean, this was so pivotal to what Jesus communicated to people. He said, you can't allow your finances to be the master over your life. Money is a horrible master. It is a great tool that could be helpful, but it is a terrifying, manipulative, cold, withholding, stressful, abusive master. It is not to be the master of your life. And Jesus put money and God on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of mastery over your life. And the reason this was so important is because Jesus wanted to be the master of people's lives, and he proved his worth when he died on one of those. You see, when Jesus was teaching, eventually people caught on that Jesus wasn't just a great teacher, that he came to pay for something. In fact, the New Testament writers, looking back on Jesus being crucified on the cross, would use financial terms to describe what Jesus did, because Jesus essentially said, hey, everyone has sinned and owes God, and I'm going to pay for that. And so the New Testament writers would use financial language to show people how important this was. Peter, one of Jesus' inner disciples, says this, for you know that it was not with perishable things, such as silver or gold, that you were redeemed, a financial term, from the empty way of life handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ. God had to turn in his blood. He had to shed his blood. It cost him his life for us to have a relationship with him. 1 Corinthians, written by Paul, says, you and I, if you really call yourself a Christian, we no longer belong to ourselves. You were bought at a price. I mean, they're using this financial language to help us understand a completely new and important spiritual matter. Mark 10:45, another disciple of Jesus, quotes Jesus as saying this, hey, if you want to know why I'm here, here's the reason. For the Son of Man, a title for Jesus, did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. I mean, they used financial terms to help people understand the magnitude of what Jesus did on 2 pieces of wood up on a hill. I mean, this was huge. And just so we know how practical this is, I mean, most of us in this room, maybe many of us, I don't know, have debt. Imagine someone coming to your house and asking, how high is your credit card bill? It's $10,000 right now. I'm going to pay that for you. I mean, how would that change your life? You would be indebted to them forever. Like, can I give you a hug? Can I take it to, what do I do to pay you back for that? Imagine someone came and said, how much do you have to pay on your house? All right, about $200,000. I'm going to pay for that. Here's a check. I don't want anything from you. I mean, how would that change your dynamic of your relationship with them? You would owe them everything. You'd be grateful You'd always want to be their friend. You couldn't pay them back. Now imagine if you owed God. How do you pay back the person who has everything? Imagine God shows up in the flesh one day and says, you have sinned against me. I mean, remember when I saw you when you were using the hammer out back, you used my name in vain. I was there. I heard it. I saw when you hurt her. I saw when you said that. I saw when you were looking at those images online that you shouldn't. I know. I'm aware of all of it. And I want to let you know that I'm not only going to forgive you, I'm going to pay for it. I mean, there was a spiritual component to this, so if you forget everything I said today, I hope you get this. The bottom line is some masters may forgive your debt, but Jesus is the only master to pay for it. It's completely different. You may be able to get on the phone and negotiate forgiveness for your student loans, maybe for a credit card, maybe for a car payment, and they'll forgive your debt, maybe to a degree. But Jesus is the only master to say, I know how much you owe, and I will pay your debt, all of it, because I love you. Completely different. Change the world. So what do you do with all this? I mean, I want to give you some practical next steps. I mean, what we just talked about is this huge subject, but I want to give you some practical next steps. In terms of your finances, you should write down 3 things that contribute to your quality of life that have nothing to do with your stuff and your money. Because those are the things ultimately you'll measure the success of your life by. It's probably people, it's probably hobbies, it may be your work, it may be something else. But you need to make sure that your standard of living and your quality of life are not the same. You need to push those far away from one another. The second one is you should decide what percentage of your income to live on. If you've not had that conversation with yourself or your spouse or your girlfriend or your grandparents or your parents, you should do this. You should go home and take whatever money that you make, and you should decide or work towards getting to a place where you live on the percentage that you want to. And then you should save. And then my advice is you should be generous, maybe to the church or someone else. And then you should find someone to say, hey, how can I help? And that will get rid of mastery of money over your life. The third is you should spy on your money for a month to get an idea where it goes. Do you spend $200 at In-N-Out or Starbucks or something like that? Where does it go? And if you don't know, you need to find that out. Because it will find a place if you don't tell it where to go. And then fourth, we think you should register for financial peace. And this isn't one of those things where you go to the class and people see you there and they just realize, oh, they're as messed up as I am. That's not what it is. It's one of those things, I mean, it's strength to get help, not to ignore your circumstances, right? It's strength to show up to a class like this. And again, if you go to all 8, we'll give you your money back. We think it's that important. Let me pray for us. Father, we're thankful for these stories, and we're thankful that your Son, Jesus Christ, has told us how important our stuff and our possessions are. Help us realize the magnitude of the influence that our stuff that we currently own, the stuff that we want and don't own, the money that we have or we don't have yet. Lord, help us push it away as a master. It is a great tool. Some of us have been blessed with a lot of it, and some of us desperately need more of it. But beyond all that, Lord, help us understand that we want you to be the master for us, not the master who is a bunch of obligations put before us, not the master who is the demanding one, but the master who died for the people he's the master of. Help us realize that. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, I want to remind you today at 1:30 p.m., we hope you'll come and have coffee, meet Sherry, Jury, and her husband, Carl. They're fantastic. See you there. Have a great Sunday.